How did American parking lots get so huge? Let's build something. Right now. You and me. Forget the highway outside your window. Forget the strip mall down the road. I'm going to hand you a small empty lot on an ordinary main street and one simple dream. You want to open a bakery. Nothing grand. Just a warm little shop on the corner. Bread in the window. A bell over the door. A few tables inside. Maybe an apartment upstairs. The kind of place your grandparents could have walked to. The kind of place a kid could reach with a few dollars in his pocket and come home with a paper bag full of rolls. You sketch it out. It's perfect. The front door opens straight onto the sidewalk. The windows face the street. People can walk past and smell the bread before they ever see the sign. It feels human. It feels normal. So you take it down to City Hall to make it real. And that is where it dies. Because before anyone approves your little bakery, the planner slides one sheet of paper across the desk. It is not about the bread. It is not about the kitchen. It is not about the safety of the building. It is a page from the zoning code, and on that page is a number. For a shop your size, the law says you must provide a minimum number of off-street parking spaces. Not if you want to. Not if your customers need them. You must, so you do the math. And your stomach drops. The parking lot the law demands is bigger than the bakery itself. To open a shop the size of a living room, you are now required to pave a field beside it. A field for cars that may never come. A field that pushes your door away from the sidewalk. A field that turns your warm little corner shop into one more beige box sitting alone in a sea of asphalt. You have not even opened yet. And the rule has already redesigned your dream into the exact thing you were trying to escape. Now picture yourself standing at the far edge of a Walmart parking lot. The asphalt runs out toward the horizon. White lines, row after row, stretching farther than anyone wants to walk. Saturday afternoon. Half the space is empty. Heat rising off the blacktop in waves. And the store itself, the whole reason any of this exists, sits pushed against the back of the property like an afterthought. You have crossed 1,000 lots like this, pushed a cart across them, lost your car in them, walked through them in the rain. You have almost certainly hated them, but you have probably never stopped to ask why they exist. Look at them now, because this did not happen by accident. Now walk the same kind of town 100 years ago. The buildings meet the sidewalk. Hardware store, tailor, diner, barber, apartments stacked above shop fronts, brick walls, narrow doors, 3 stories, windows that actually open, people living over the places where they work. You park at the curb, if you park at all. Then you walk. A storefront could be tiny, a building could be cheap to start and still outlive the person who built it. A family could open a shop on a corner with a little money and a good idea because the corner was already there, already connected, already touching the street. That world was normal. That world was ours. Then we made it illegal. Here is how it happened. In 1923, Columbus, Ohio passed one of the first rules of its kind. New apartment buildings had to provide their own off-street parking. The idea sounded reasonable. Cars were arriving. Curbs were filling up. Nobody wanted every new building to dump all of its parking problems onto the street. So one city tried to fix. Other cities watched. Other cities copied. Then came the war. And after the war, cars arrived by the millions. By the 1950s, the copying had become a stampede. Across America, zoning codes began demanding that every new building come with its own private supply of parking. Apartments needed parking. Stores needed parking. Churches needed parking. Restaurants needed parking. Hospitals needed parking. Even places people might once have walked to now had to be designed around the assumption that everyone would arrive alone in a car. But there was one question almost nobody asked. How many spaces? Where did the actual numbers come from? This is where the floor gives way. Cities needed numbers, so they turned to manuals, engineering tables, parking generation rates, pages that seemed scientific because they were full of decimals and charts and official-looking categories. 1 space for this, 3 for that, 5 for the other. A planner could open the book, find the land use, copy the number, and place it directly into law. Simple, clean, professional. There was only one problem. A lot of those numbers were not measured in normal places. They were often measured at suburban businesses with free parking, wide roads, no real walking culture, and little or no transit. In other words, the most car-dependent places in the country were used to decide how much parking everywhere else should be forced to build. The manuals counted how many cars showed up at places already designed for cars. Then cities used those counts to force every new place to be designed for cars. The dog chased its own tail. And someone wrote the tale into the law. So the code never asked how much parking a place truly needed. It assumed everyone would always drive. Always alone. Always to a building surrounded by asphalt. Then it forced every builder to pave for that fantasy before they were allowed to build anything at all. Which means the old American Main Street, the little shop with apartments above it, doors on the sidewalk, buildings pressed close enough to stroll between, did not disappear simply because people stopped wanting it. It disappeared because, under many modern codes, it became almost impossible to build. Not unfashionable. Not outdated. Illegal. Go back to your bakery. You try to build it the old way. Small, dense, useful, walkable. You cannot. There is no room left for the bakery once you have built the parking the bakery is required to have. So the building moves back. The sidewalk dies. The parking lot moves to the front. And the street becomes a place you pass through instead of a place you arrive. Now multiply that moment. Not once. Not one bakery. Every builder. Every shop. Every apartment. Every church. Every restaurant. Every town. Millions of times over. One rule, repeated for decades, slowly turning America from a place of streets into a place of lots. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Most American buildings today are not really buildings. They are parking lots with a store attached. The parking is the big thing, the expensive thing, the thing the law actually cared about. The shop sitting at the edge is just the excuse. You do not drive to the store. You drive to the parking lot. The store just comes with it. Now count what it cost us. Nobody knows the exact number of parking spaces in America. That alone should bother you. We have measured everything in this country, but somehow not the thing we paved half our towns to create. Some estimates say there may be as many as 8 parking spaces for every car. 8. For every single car. Think about that number the next time you stand in a half-empty lot outside a grocery store, a pharmacy, a bank, or a chain restaurant. Each space is not just paint on pavement, it is land that cannot hold a home, land that cannot hold a shop, land that cannot hold a tree, land that cannot absorb rain, land that had to be graded, paved, drained, lit, maintained, and eventually repaired, and someone pays for it. You were told parking was free. It never was. The cost is hidden in your rent, your groceries, your coffee, your haircut, your prescription, your apartment. Every time a city forces a builder to provide parking, the price does not vanish. It moves quietly into everything built on top of it. Even if you walked, even if you took the bus, even if you never owned a car, you still paid for the empty space. And the rules kept growing. 1 parking space for this many seats, 2 spaces for that many beds, 3 spaces for that much floor area. A city could demand more parking for a restaurant than the restaurant had room to serve food. A church could be sized not by its congregation, but by the number of cars the law imagined showing up on Sunday morning. The numbers looked precise, but precision is not the same as truth. A UCLA professor named Donald Shoup spent decades opening these tables and asking the question almost nobody in City Hall wanted to ask. Where did this number come from? What he found was devastating. Many parking requirements were not based on deep science. They were often based on thin observations, copied from one place to another, then treated like engineering fact simply because they had been printed in a manual. Shoup called the practice what it was, a pseudoscience. Numbers wearing the costume of expertise, and yet those numbers had the power to decide what your town could become. They decided whether your bakery could touch the sidewalk. They decided whether apartments could be affordable. They decided whether an old building could be reused or had to sit empty because it could not magically create 30 parking spaces behind itself. They decided whether a small business could open at all. That is the quiet violence of the parking minimum. It does not look dramatic. No one swings a hammer. No one announces that the old town is being destroyed. The code just says, provide the spaces. So the builder does, the next builder does, the builder after that does, and one lot at a time, the town disappears. The old corner store does not get replaced by a better corner store, it gets replaced by a drive-through. The diner does not become a new diner, it becomes a pad site. The apartment over the shop does not become more housing. It becomes a drainage requirement, a setback, a turning radius, a parking aisle. A place built for people becomes a place built around the storage of empty machines. And this is the strangest part. For decades, we called that normal. A child walking to buy bread became strange. A person living above a shop became unusual. A street with buildings on both sides became old-fashioned. But a one-story box surrounded by a moat of asphalt? That became ordinary. Maybe the real question is not why America has so much parking. Maybe the real question is why we stopped noticing it. Because a parking lot is not neutral. It changes the distance between everything. It makes every trip longer. It makes walking feel foolish. It makes small buildings financially impossible. It makes towns hotter, uglier, emptier, and more expensive. And then, after forcing everything apart, we point to the empty sidewalks and say, "See, nobody walks here." Of course they do not. We built a world where walking became punishment. But here is the one thing that is finally beginning to change. In 2017, Buffalo, New York did something quietly radical. It opened the zoning code, found the parking minimum, and deleted it citywide. No dramatic ceremony. No national revolution. Just one city admitting that maybe the number had done enough damage. And what happened next was important. Developers did not stop building parking altogether. They built less of it. They built what they thought their projects actually needed instead of what a table demanded. Old buildings became easier to reuse. Small projects became more possible. The city did not collapse. The sky did not fall. The number was removed, and life continued. Which tells you the cruelest thing of all. It was never permanent. It was never inevitable. It was a choice. We chose to bulldoze the corner store. We chose to push buildings away from the sidewalk. We chose to wrap every shop, church, diner, school, and apartment building in a moat of asphalt. We made that choice in fear, copied it without thinking, and left it sitting in the law for generations, while it quietly ate our towns alive. And now, finally, some places are choosing differently. One city at a time. One code at a time. One deleted number at a time. People are starting to remember what a street was actually for. Not just traffic. Not just parking. Not just moving through. A street was where life happened, where the bakery opened its door, where the kid walked for bread, where the apartment lights came on above the shop, where the town saw itself. The parking lot is only half the wound. Because once every building hides behind its own field of asphalt, the thing that used to sit in the center of town, the place people actually walk to, has nowhere left to exist. There is a video right here about why American towns have no center anymore, the way so many older towns still do. And just like this story, the answer comes down to rules almost nobody voted for, numbers almost nobody questioned, and a version of normal that was built so slowly we forgot it was built at all.